Hi there, Steve Kaufman here, and today I want to talk about learning two languages at the same time. Now, I think some years ago I did a video on this subject, and I think my position has always been that learning a language requires so much dedication that you kind of need to focus on one. And I suggested too that if you're far enough along in one language, you might then devote 20% of your time to another language, or vice versa, but there is this 80-20. You still need to focus on one language. Certainly, I remember when I was learning Chinese, it was a total obsession. I was spending 6-7 hours a day on Chinese. I would sort of steal time away from my Chinese to go and play tennis or watch a movie, but then rush back to my Chinese. I was totally obsessed, and within 1 year, I got to where I could read novels and interpret and function in Chinese. In my Russian, again, I only focused on the one language. I was only putting in an hour or so a day, but I was doing it over several years now on my own, but still focused on one language. And I have tended to focus on one language. But, I always stress that language learning is a matter of what your goals are, what your preferences are, your situation, and so forth. So, I have now decided, effective this weekend, I started in on Farsi. I am not far enough along really in Arabic. I'm going to start speaking with tutors in Arabic, and I'm going to be doing it here at Link, because hopefully this week we will launch our new platform, making it easier for people to be tutors at Link and for people to find tutors at Link, and I'm going to take advantage of that to speak Arabic, and you'll be able to judge my progress in Arabic. But I live in Vancouver, and here, particularly in North Vancouver, there are a lot of Farsi speakers. So I don't have much opportunity to use Arabic, but I do have opportunity to use Farsi. So I said, I want to start getting into Farsi. First of all, having put a lot of effort into the Arabic writing system, this is now going to help me in Farsi. There's a few additional or different letters in Farsi, but by and large, it's the same writing system. I want to be able to my doctor is from Iran. Shopkeepers are from Iran. I run into Farsi speakers all the time. So, obviously this becomes motivating. And I often make the point that, how early you start to speak depends on where you are and what your opportunities are to speak. If I had been living in an Arabic country, for example, I would have spoken much more Arabic, even with my limited level of Arabic. Whereas, having to set up discussions via Skype and stuff, I want to make sure that I have a certain level, of comprehension before I do that. I think I'm kind of starting to be at that level now in my Arabic. But bear in mind that I'm retired. I do whatever I want with my time. I can putt around the garden. I can go play golf. Last night we had the family over. We were swimming in the ocean. And within that, I find time to indulge my interest in languages. And an interest in languages means an interest, obviously, in speaking to the people, but also connecting to that history, culture, civilization, and so forth. So, obviously, getting into Arabic, I looked around and found that in my library of books that I have bought over time, I have a book here on a history of the Arab peoples, which is interesting. And as I started into Farsi, then I looked around my library again and I found I had this book, Persian Fire. I haven't gone very far into it. I tend to buy books because the title seems interesting. But it is, as you get into this book, for example, and I did, and I read a bit about, Cyrus and the Khorasan highway and just the extent to which the sort of Middle East, Central Asia is connected. The sort of Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, came from a part of the world where, this is well before Islam, where Persians and Semitic peoples were, and so you had the Assyrians and the Medians or whatever they were, the Medes and the Persians and whatever. It's all fascinating to read about this, but get a better sense of the history and the geography of that region than you do just by looking at the odd map of the world. And so to me that's fascinating. And I'm not yet at the level where I could, read about the history of Arab countries or Persia in their language, but I'm kind of starting on that journey. And I find that a very, fascinating prospect that I can do that. I have found people online to create content for us in Farsi. We now have Who Is She, which I've started into. We have the mini stories in Farsi. We have a couple who are producing casual conversation, both at a beginner level and a more sort of intermediate level. All of this is gradually going to be put up on Link. The only problem with Farsi is that we don't have text-to-speech. For whatever reason, it's not available in the text-to-speech package that we use. So it's a bit of a disadvantage. But what I'm doing with Farsi, I first have to start to get a sense of the language. So I'm going through Who Is She and many stories. I'm doing it in sentence mode. And you can find sentence mode. And by the way, this week, there'll be some changes to the site that make it easier for people to find sentence mode. But with a new language like Farsi, at first it's just noise to me. And then I take it one sentence at a time. I listen over and over again to that sentence. I try to read it. I go through like the first or a couple of lessons in Who Is She. Start to see how the language works. I also have some books that I bought, Living Language, but they're not that helpful. I can't absorb sort of verb conjugations right up front. So I prefer to just kind of listen to it again, get a sense of how the language works. And that's basically where I am after one day with Farsi, sort of just discovering the language. But I remember that's where I was with Arabic. And we just had the fellow one of the people I'm dealing with in terms of getting more Arabic content for Link is producing with a female voice, Who Is She, a very nice, pleasant, clear version of Who Is She in Arabic. And he sent that through and I listened to it and I understand it all. So, and yet when I started with Arabic, it was just noise. So when we start in a language, it's just noise. And gradually we start to observe the language, start to look up some words, read it again, kind of understand it. Of course, with content like Who Is She, the translation is available there into English, so I can again see what that sentence means in terms of a full sentence translated. And so, I'm going to spend, I don't know how much time on Farsi, but obviously I'm quite motivated to be able to say a few things to Farsi speakers here in North Vancouver. But at the same time, we have some wonderful content in Arabic that's been uploaded. This person from Egypt, Ahmed, has a blog and he talks about different, there's some biographies of famous Islamic scholars and so forth and so on. One of the interesting things, by the way, I like little bits of serendipity or whatever it is. In the biography of Al-Biruni, who is basically a Persian scholar who wrote in Arabic, a Greek man is referred to as El-Yunani. It's the word for Greek. And I discover from reading Persian Fire that the Persians referred to the Greeks as Ioanians, the Ioanian Sea, however you pronounce that, Yunani. So it's interesting to know where this term, presumably common in the Middle East, for Greeks come from. It's the Ionian Sea. So just to let you know that I'm exploring two languages. I'm going to keep them apart. The Arabic helps my Persian or Farsi because there are some identifiable Arabic words in Farsi, plus the writing system is very, very close. And but if I were going for an exam, if I needed the language for my work, I would simply focus on one language. But I'm in a position where I can afford to be a dilettante. So there you have it on learning two languages at the same time, in this case, Arabic and now Farsi. We'll see how far I get. Thank you for listening. Bye for now.